Hey everyone, welcome back. On today's version of Tony's Life Stories, I am going to talk about my first day of chemo. So, those of y'all that haven't done chemo or getting ready to do chemo, you kind of need to be prepared. And so, I don't know if it's like this everywhere, but if you've watched my stories, I did my treatment at Methodist Hospital in the Med Center of Houston. And so up there, when you go in, you go in and check in or whatever, and each patient has their own little room. It's like there's the sink and the chair and the IV poles and all that stuff, but everybody's got their own room, and so you go in there with your person or your people or whoever, and I think there's like 60 something rooms. I could be lying to you. I have to go on Monday. I'll check. But then in like the common area, they have couches and chairs where people can sit. Like if you have family members going in with you, you can go in or whatever. Well, in the waiting room, you can tell who the new people are. I didn't realize that my first time, but after I'd been, I would see people, and it's just a look of fear because you don't know what's going to happen. And they tell you in your chemo ed, when you go to your chemo ed class, these are the people you're going to meet with or whatever, but you don't really know until you get there. And so they call your name, you go, and they have to do your weight every single time because they mix your chemo meds based on your weight. And so they don't want you to go high. They don't want your weight to fluctuate because that affects the dosages of chemo you get. So anyway, take your weight, go to your room. I don't know if you can see, but can you see? There's my port right there. So they access your port. They do a blood draw because they need to check your blood counts to make sure that your body can withstand a chemo. And so anyway, they do that. And if you're female and you're premenopausal, you have to do a pregnancy test because obviously you can't have chemo if you're pregnant. And anyway, so Joe went with me. We're sitting there and we're waiting, and then in comes the nutritionist. And so they go over diet and what you should be eating, and you know what you should be eating, and they want to, if you start having problems with your diet, these are the things you need to do, and here's our card and whatever. And they give you this folder of everything. Well, then in comes a social worker. Hey, do you need anything? And you have to do about, I don't know, probably about every 3 or 4 times you go in, they give you a questionnaire, and it's about your mental health. Like, are you depressed? Are you anxious? Do you have suicidal thoughts? The whole thing. And do you need help? We'll get you signed up with a therapist and all that sort of stuff. So they do that. Well, then you also get to meet with the pharmacist. So the pharmacist comes in and they've got their set of forms that they're going. And keep in mind, in the midst of all this, they're coming in. They're like, okay, you need to take pre-meds, and they're just putting stuff in you, and you have no idea. Well, you do because the pharmacist is fixing to tell you, but you get pre-meds so that you can take your drugs, whatever they may be. So anyway, pharmacist comes in, and so I have to do 2. I do the chemo, which at the time was called Taxol. Paclitaxel is what it is. Paxitaxol, something like that. Paclitaxel, and the Herceptin. The Herceptin is what I'm still doing. I have to do it until November of 2020, the end of November, beginning of December 2020. And then the Paclitaxel is the chemo med that you have to take 12 rounds of, and it's every week for 12 weeks. So goes through, like, here are the side effects for the Herceptin, and goes through all of them. Here's the side effects for the Taxol. It goes through all of them. And anyway, we're sitting there and I'm listening, and he's like, do you have any questions? I'm like, no. I mean, you don't know what your side effects are going to be until you have side effects. I mean, that's just what it is. And so, and the list of Taxol side effects is so long. I mean, you've got the obvious ones, the nausea, the loss of hair, you can get neuropathy in your fingers and your toes. And, those are the common ones, which, if you know anybody that's gone chemo, then that's probably some of those side effects that you've heard of. But there's also this long list of other ones. And he's like, I'm not here to scare you. And I'm like, no, I understand. You're telling us worst case scenario. I get it. I mean, I understand we have to know or whatever. So, keep in mind, we got there at like 9 a.m. And so lunchtime rolls around and Joe and I are like freaking starving because they tell you don't come in with a full stomach because you can get sick, and they don't want you to, they don't want you to get sick. They leave you little barf bags and, stuff you don't want to know anything about. But anyway, so it's now like 1:00 and they come in, and your first Herceptin, they do the Herceptin first. Your first Herceptin, you do the bag over an hour and a half to make, just do it slowly or whatever. So I'm in this recliner and I'm like, and I bring in, like, I have my chemo bag, and I'll have to go through it one day because it's still packed. I take it with me when I go to my, depending on which week it is for my Herceptin. Every other week I have to do a pregnancy test, and for some reason a pregnancy test takes an hour and a half at a hospital. I don't know why, but it does. So I'll do, one of these days I'll go through my chemo bag so you can see what's in it. But I have an electric blanket because it is cold. When I say cold, it is cold in there. Not to Joe, to Tony, it's really cold. So have an electric blanket, and I'm kicked back, and I'm like half asleep, and while I'm taking the Herceptin. So that's over. Beep, beep, beep. They come in, and they come in with your bag of meds, and it's in a brown bag with the skull and crossbones on it, and it can't be exposed to light, and it's like a milky color. So anyway, they undo the Herceptin. The whole time you've got saline also. And before, the pre-meds, I've since learned, was Benadryl and steroids. And they give it to you so that you can tolerate the Taxol, the Paxitaxel, what they call Taxol. So they, this is, why make anything easy, right, Tony? So they come in, and I have two nurses. One of them she's a traveling nurse. She's from Chicago. And it's the first time she's coming to the end of her time in Houston, but she's the first time she's been in an oncology or chemo floor or whatever. So anyway, she's got the supervisor there with her, and they hook me up, and it's 3:00. 3:00, remember this. And the lady, the head nurse, goes, okay, here's the bag of drugs. Just in case you have a reaction, we're going to leave it right here on the counter for you. And I'm like, okay. And she goes, now, if you need anything, push the button. And she looks at Joe, and you come find us. If we're not, if we don't come, you come find us. And we're like, okay. And so I kick back in the recliner, and I'm laying there, and all of a sudden I look up, and I'm like, oh my God, something's happening. I'm like, Joe, push the button. And that's all I remember. And so I'm lying to you. I do remember Joe. I remember Joe pushing the button, and I remember the little speaker going, are you okay? And I went, no. And that was it. I started to say no, and I remember nothing else. Nothing. And you'd have to, and Joe's not here, but he'd have to hear his version, because literally, so I'm going to tell you what I felt. So I ooh, this feels weird. And that total heat washed through my body. I started seeing stars. I couldn't focus anymore. My legs started tingling. I felt like I peed my pants. I started I wasn't breathing real fast, but I could tell that my heart was racing. And I started shaking and lost vision. Nothing. Totally, I was gone. I was out. And so anyway, I remember opening my eyes and looking, and Joe and if y'all know Joe, it's so funny. He's sitting in the doorway like this, total Marine Corps, no emotion, arms crossed, standing in the doorway. And I remember the one nurse tapping me on my leg, and she's like, oh, honey, you're getting your color back. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? And so they said, what did you feel? They kept and I remember them saying, open your mouth. And at the time I was wearing a cold cap, and I think that's probably what saved my life, but I was wearing a cold cap, and you have this thing strapped, and you can't really, and they're like, open your mouth. And I'm like, and they're like, stick out your tongue. And I'm like, they were trying to see if my tongue was swollen, to see if my breathing was okay. And then kind of out, and I was kind of in and out, a lot of in and out. And so after I started coming back, and I'm like, what happened? And as you seem to, the nurse, you seem to have had a reaction. And I'm sitting there, and I've got my eyes closed, and they said 302. keep in mind, they started the med. They turned on the IV pole, you know, the you know, whatever, at 3 o'clock. And at 3:02 is when I hit the button and they went, and then Joe went to find him. 2 minutes. And I remember nothing. And it was 3:25 when I was coherent enough to understand what was going on. I have no idea what happened. And so they called it and they're like, what did you feel? And I'm like, you know, I knew something was happening. Well, my blood pressure evidently got to like 169 over 139, 137, something like that. And Joe's, according to Joe, I was beet red. And like I said, I don't remember, but Joe said that there were 5 nurses in there. They're clearing the floor. They're like, clear the floor. We need to get her on the floor. Clear the floor. And I'm like, and I don't know what's going on. I am oblivious to all of this. And I had come to find out, one of the worst reactions these nurses had seen to Taxol. And so they call the nurse, my oncologist nurse, and they're trying to explain to her what's going on. And she's trying to relay it to Dr. Niravath, and like, we'll be down there in just a minute. And in the meantime, they're like, do you need to go to the bathroom? And I'm like, yeah. And so I get up and I have my little pole and I'm walking to the bathroom. I go and I shut the door and I lock the door. And you can hear the nurses say, did she just lock the door? She locked the door. Yeah, they can unlock it from the outside. But, you know, I guess they thought I was going to, the door's on a main hallway where everybody's, anyway, whatever. So then when I come out, I open the door and like everybody's standing there, like Chandra, which is the nurse, Dr. Niravath, the 2 nurses that were in my assigned 2 nurses that were in there with me, and Joe's kind of off to the side. And so anyway, they get me back in the room and they start going, can you explain to us everything that was going on? And I'm like, I'm trying to explain to them, and they're like, and I'm still seeing stars, y'all. I still like literally, and you're talking, this is now like 45 minutes after, like it's after they initially started the meds. This doesn't happen to everybody, so don't get scared if y'all are getting Taxol. This doesn't happen to everybody. It just happened to Tony. So anyway, Dr. Nervous, she's like, and I don't know what all they gave me to stop this reaction. They go, usually what we do is after you've got the meds, we start it back up. And she goes, but we're not going to do that with you. And I'm like, and she asked me something. I'm like, y'all, that scared the hell out of me. Like, I don't know what happened. And so she's like, well, the good news is that paclitaxel is a generic. And since you had such an allergic reaction to the generic, your insurance has to approve the name brand, which is a better chemo med with less side effects. So if there is good news to the fact that I, as Joe says, almost died, I mean, that, you know, the big joke is I almost died. I don't know if I really did or not. And let me tell you, y'all, I was scared. But they ended up letting me change chemo meds, had to get it approved or whatever. So then the rest of my chemos were what's called a Braxane, but that's a different story for a different time. So anyway, the whole, this is just like, seriously, if y'all know me, this is like total, like, of course that's going to happen to Tony, you know? So, it was scary. And it was, you know, that was my first chemo. And, I remember it was, you know, looking back, it was like probably 4:30 when they finally, we got there at 9 a.m. We had to leave the house at 7:15, 7:30 to get there by 9 because, you know, like I said, it's about a 45-minute drive on a good day, but we're also going into the med center during rush hour. So it's never, you know, it's never easy, but, you know, we do it. You don't have a choice. But I remember driving home and I told Joe, and I went, you know, Joe, when the pharmacist was going over the side effects, telling us worst case scenario, I didn't realize I was worst case scenario. So it was, looking back, it's funny. At the time, not so funny. And then knowing that the next week I'm going to have to go back and do it all over again. And what was interesting about the next time is I probably should have asked more questions about stuff. I just went by I'm going to say ignorance is bliss. I mean, that's been literally there's stuff I probably should have asked along the way. And I asked questions, and I always had someone in the appointments with me, but I don't know if I just didn't ask the right questions or they tell you, and I think I've told you all this, they say do not get on the internet. So I didn't. They tell you do not, if you're going to get on the internet, you get on breastcancer.org, Susan B. Komen, and there was one other one. I don't remember. And I literally, I didn't watch YouTube videos. I just went, okay, this is what it says, and I'm going to go do this, and that's the way it's going to be. And looking back, I'm like, man, I wish I would have known more. And then, I did. I would go look for YouTube videos, and there's not information. You hear people would, you would see posts, and you would see, there's so many of, my hair growing back and that sort of stuff, but there's not any about the weird things that I wish people would have told me, like, your scalp thing, and then your eyelashes, and that's a whole nother video for a whole nother day. But anyway, that was Tony's first chemo, but it just, it was what it was. Anyway, I was, see, chemo brain. Going back the next week, I won't lie, I was scared, and I asked Joe, on Tuesday, I'm like, okay, do I need to find someone to go to chemo with me, or are you going to go? And it's like, no, I'm going to go. No, I'm going. And which is interesting, because I guess my friends have little faith in Joe and my family, not my family, because Joe does not like hospitals. When his mom was at the, he does not like hospitals, and he does have a really bad, skin condition, and he's not supposed to go in hospitals anyway, but he was like, nope. And so, and then at the next one, he wouldn't let the nurse leave. He's like, you need to stay here 4 minutes after they start, because that's how fast the reaction was the first time, was 2 minutes. And so anyway, the next one went much better. But anyway, the whole point of this was actually to talk about what you need to know for your first chemo, not Tony almost died chemo, but that's what happened. And that's how this Tony stories morph. So, anyway, thankfully I'm still here, got to see another day, and try, and, got a better chemo med, and, things worked out well. My dog is at the window. Now he must see something, because he's starting to get a little anxious. But anyway, if you would, come back. If you want to come back, subscribe, just so you know to come back. And when I post videos, and I posted one the other day, but for some reason it never showed up. And it was an interesting one. Stop it, Track. It was an interesting one, because it was one of those days. Track, stop. Anyway, obviously got to go. Woo, dogs. I will talk to y'all later. Bye.